Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Stuff Explained from the Motley Experience. As per usual, just starting off with some housekeeping, get it out of the way now. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just look up the Motley Experience, or you can find us by the username at MOTLEYXPERIENCE. And make sure to use the hashtag StuffExplained to talk about this and other episodes. Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts and any other type of podcast streaming services that allow you to give a thumbs up or rating. And leave some comments. I'd love to get some feedback on what you're getting out of this episode and what you'd like to hear more of. And with that, let's move on to this episode of Stuff Explained. So I originally had another episode in mind, but with everything that's been going on regarding the coronavirus, I thought this was a great opportunity to dive into it myself because I had a general understanding, but I wanted to do a bit more for my own sake, and then share that on this episode of Stuff Explained. So this episode is all about the coronavirus, what it is, where it came from, symptoms, and what's going on in the world today regarding this outbreak.
Join me, Aristides Marousas, as I uncover interesting facts and discuss big ideas on Stuff Explained from the Motley Experience. Experience your world.
So I did have another episode planned for this week, but a friend of mine, Kevin, suggested that I consider doing one on the coronavirus. And upon further contemplation, I decided that it was a good idea because I have a general understanding of what's going on, and I feel like a lot of people have a general understanding. A lot of people are also freaked out, depending on how it's being portrayed by the media and things like that. So this episode is about the origins of the coronavirus, how it's spreading, how much we should be concerned, and what the world is doing about it. So, coronaviruses are named from the Latin word for crown because the virus has crown-like spikes on its surface when viewed through an electron microscope. And it's kind of funny because apparently Corona, the beer, has gotten some weird attention because people think it's somehow linked to Corona beer and the coronavirus. I don't know how they make that connection besides just the name. But anyways, this virus is mostly found infecting bats, pigs, and small animals, but it does have the ability, obviously, to mutate and infect humans. So there are 7 total strains, including this new one, and they're all known to infect humans and cause issues in the respiratory tract. So 4 out of these 7 cause the common cold, so nothing too severe there. But 2 others rank among the deadliest human infections. And these are SARS, which is the severe acute respiratory syndrome, and MERS, which is the Middle East respiratory syndrome. So several of these strains are believed to have originated in bats before moving on to other mammals like cats, camels, or other animals as well, before eventually being transmitted to humans. Now, scientists are not sure just yet what the origins of this newest coronavirus are, but one theory is that it also came from bats and somehow contaminated a large animal and seafood market in Wuhan, China. China actually first reported this outbreak in Wuhan back on December 30th in 2019, so just a few weeks ago. Now, the symptoms exhibited when someone is infected with the coronavirus include fever, coughing, aches, and shortness of breath. So very similar to the common cold or even some, flu-like symptoms. It's basically an upper respiratory infection. More severe cases, though, can lead to pneumonia, kidney failure, and even death. Now, according to the head of China's National Health Commission, patients who do not exhibit symptoms but carry the virus are still able to spread it. According to the United States Center for Disease Control, people can become ill anywhere between 2 and 14 days after being infected. And this is the part that, maybe scares people the most because someone might not show any symptoms at all, but are still able to transmit this. Now, the virus is spread through coughing, kissing, sneezing, or other forms of contact with saliva. Disease modeling experts estimate that, on average, every infected person so far has transmitted the virus to about 2.6 other people. The rates are higher than several influenza viruses, but are much lower than a disease like measles. These estimates are still preliminary, and are likely to change with time and lower actually as a result of increased measures to prevent the virus from spreading and as we learn more and as more medicines are made available to combat it. Public health officials have developed tests which can be used to determine whether someone has a coronavirus or some other illness, so it is detectable.
Hey, you. Yeah, you over there listening to Stuff Explained from the Motley Experience. So if you're already listening to Stuff Explained from the Motley Experience, why not take that next step and head on over to themotleyexperience.com/connect. Then all you got to do is enter your email address and you instantly become a part of the Motley Experience community. By doing this, you'll get the weekly insider newsletter that gives you all the latest and greatest from the Motley Experience, including updates from your favorite podcast, Stuff Explained. Again, themotleyexperience.com/connect. There's absolutely nothing like having custom-made quality music for whatever your project might be. So if you're in the market for custom-made music, look no further than Retcon Industries. They provide tailor-made music for all sorts, whether it's professional wrestling, podcasts, trailers, and so much more. They can do it for you. So for more information, go to www.retconindustries.com or email my good friend Greg at retcongreg@gmail.com. Retcon Industries can also be found on Facebook and on Instagram at Retcon Industries. That's RETCON Industries.
So far, about 10,000 people have been diagnosed, the vast majority of which are in China. In nearly all of the 6 confirmed cases in the U.S. up until now, the patients had recently traveled to Wuhan, China. While 222 people have died as a result of the coronavirus, there have been no deaths so far outside of China. Now, despite the media attention and government action, this outbreak of coronavirus is much less deadly than common influenza viruses. Fortunately, it does not seem as though the coronavirus is undergoing any mutations amongst humans, which basically means it'll be easier to make some sort of medicine for or just treat it in general because it's staying fairly stable. Now, what's being done to stop it, and is there a treatment? So there is no vaccine yet for the virus, but the National Institutes of Health are working on creating one and to begin testing in the coming months. No antiviral treatments have been effective against any of the coronaviruses, but a Chinese hospital in Wuhan has begun testing an HIV treatment, which blocks key enzymes that allow the virus to replicate, which is an interesting way to go about it. The World Health Organization has gone on to name this outbreak a global health emergency. And this international health alert is a call to action for countries around the world to work together under the guidance of the United Nations Health Agency. So this is actually the 6th time that they've made such a declaration. The first was during the swine flu epidemic back in 2009, followed by polio in 2014, Ebola, which also happened in 2014, Zika in 2016, and then Ebola again in 2019. Chinese authorities have made measures such as sealing off Wuhan to contain as much of the epidemic as possible. Many other Chinese cities have implemented transportation restrictions impacting over 56 million people. Countries like Russia, Mongolia, and North Korea have actually closed their borders to China to guard against the outbreak. Governments have issued travel warnings for Chinese destinations, and several airlines have actually canceled flights until this outbreak is over, or at least the worst of it is over. And just as far as personal protection goes, a lot of people wear masks, and that helps a little bit. Masks actually offer limited support. So standard surgical masks, they don't fully seal the nose and mouth, and they actually need to be disposed of pretty frequently. And other masks may not be suitable for children or people with facial hair. So the best advice given right now is just to avoid contact as much as possible with sick people and animals, and also being super diligent about washing your hands and general cleanliness. And just to finish off, I just really quickly checked the latest news because this is an ongoing crisis, so to speak. And actually, the worldwide number of cases is nearing 12,000. So a bit earlier, I mentioned 10,000. But still, the majority of these cases are in China, and the number of deaths has climbed up to 259. All of the deaths have been in China, according to the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control. In the U.S., foreigners who have traveled to China in the past 2 weeks will be barred from entering the country. And the White House has actually declared a national public health emergency over the new coronavirus. And this just helps expedite the different research and things like that to make sure that the spread is limited as much as possible. And actually, as part of the U.S. proclamation, any citizen returning to the U.S. who has been to Hubei province in China in the past 14 days will be under mandatory quarantine for 14 days, which is thought to be the incubation period. And any citizen who's been to the rest of China within the past 2 weeks will get a health screening when they get back to the U.S., and then they'll be asked to self-quarantine for 14 days, and their movements will actually be monitored. So these restrictions are going to take effect beginning at 5 p.m. on Sunday, which, if you're listening to this when it comes out on Monday, was obviously the day prior. And a lot of people are worried about this. People are freaking out, honestly. And from all the research I've done, again, I'm no medical professional, while this does seem to be spreading quite quickly, the spreading seems to be in part due to this occurring during a holiday, the Lunar New Year, I believe it's called, in China, which is people travel very frequently. So when this outbreak happened in Wuhan, you have millions and millions of people traveling all over the place. Obviously, it's going to spread. And with the way our world is set up today with frequent airline travel, that's going to make the spread even further. But even though there have unfortunately been up to 259 deaths, this disease is not really considered deadly yet, and most of the deaths have been with the elderly or people who have had other health complications such as diabetes or have already had some sort of breathing complication or issue. So not to take away from their deaths at all, but this doesn't seem to be a very deadly disease. And as long as you approach it the same way you would treat the flu, which actually the flu kills more people, several thousand people every year, the flu is actually more dangerous than this from what we know today. So if you are panicking about this, you can take a breath, sigh of relief, especially if you are in the U.S. This doesn't really seem to be a major issue, and most of Europe as well. The numbers of those who have been afflicted by this seem to be quite low outside of China, and it looks like the world is really doing a great job at getting on top of this before it gets out of hand, which, kudos to them for really, stepping up just within a few weeks. So hopefully there aren't any more deaths, and hopefully some sort of cure or treatment is created for this soon, just to spare any more suffering. But again, coronavirus isn't necessarily something you have to really freak out about or worry about. Just follow general cleanliness, washing your hands, making sure that as much as possible you're avoiding sick people. Try not to get sneezed on or coughed on. Try not to sneeze on and cough on others. Just, basic hygiene and cleanliness. And that's it for this week's episode of Stuff Explained. Hopefully you learned something. If you were worrying about coronavirus before, hopefully that's not the case anymore. Feel free to reach out on Twitter or Instagram, hashtag Stuff Explained. You can use Facebook as well. And let me know what you thought of this and other episodes. And I hope to hear from you soon. And if not, then I'll be back next week with another episode of Stuff Explained. Thank you.
Stuff Explained is written and produced by me, Aristides Marusas. Music is produced by the talented Greg Massey of Retcon Industries. Visit themotleyexperience.com for more thoughtful original content, and you can also find links to the sources used for each episode of Stuff Explained. Like us on Facebook at The Motley Experience, Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Motley Experience and use the hashtag StuffExplained. If you like this episode, leave a review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thank you for listening.